These three reckless boys thought they could get away with anything, partying hard, chasing girls, and hiding behind their powerful police connections. But when they mess with the wrong girl, the granddaughter of a deadly war veteran, their world flips upside down. What happens next is a brutal lesson in fear, justice, and consequences. Katya Afanina is a 20-year-old beautiful girl who lives a modest life with her only family. Her grandfather Ivan, a decorated World War II veteran in a small town in Russia. Their days are usually simple and filled with peace. But in a nearby neighborhood, there are a toxic trio of local boys known for their unchecked behavior and their weekly parties that often involve alcohol and paid companionship. Wednesdays are their designated night of indulgence, but on this particular evening, they struggle to find a girl who is willing to join them. Unfortunately, Katya happens to be passing by that evening, and their attention turns to her. One of the boys, Vadim, recognizes her as a former classmate, and the other two urged him to approach and talk to her. So he met her with Igor, and the two tried to convince Katya to come upstairs and hang out with them. She was very reluctant to join them, but when they claimed that their friend was celebrating his birthday and they continued begging, Katya finally gave in and joined them. Inside the apartment, Katya immediately becomes uneasy as she spots bottles of alcohol scattered across the table, but the boys coax her to drink and even remind her of her school days when she was praised for her singing. In an attempt to be polite, Katya sings for the supposed birthday boy but unknown to her. Boris, the ringleader, secretly laced her drink as she sang. Soon after, Katya begins to feel dizzy, and as she attempts to leave, the effects of the drug overwhelm her. Then the boys lead her into a separate room and close in on her. They immediately begin their assault on her. It was started by Boris, while the others assist in holding her down and ignoring her attempts to resist. Hours pass, and now feeling totally broken and traumatized, Katya lies on the floor as the boys continue their assault. Eventually, they let her go late in the evening, and they even humiliated her the more by forcing a hush payment into her purse. Katya stumbles outside and throws the money away on the street before making her way home in silence. In the meantime, Vadim begins to panic as he starts to fear the possible consequences of their actions, but the others remain confident as they claim to rely on Vadim's father, who is an influential police official, as they believe that they are untouchable. When Katya finally arrives home, she collapses in tears. Immediately, her grandfather noticed the bruises on her body. He understood what had happened. Totally enraged, he demands to know who did this, and when Katya mentions their names, he storms outside, ready to take justice into his own hands. But one of his neighbors intercepts him and suggests that he take the safer route of calling the police. Although he is still furious and filled with the desire for revenge, Ivan pauses and considers his options. In the end, he decides to give the law and justice a chance. Shortly after, a team of police officers storm the boys' apartment and place the three young men under arrest. The lead inspector, who is visibly outraged by their actions, shares the same fury as Katya's grandfather. He was determined to secure justice, and he immediately began the interrogation. At first, the boys deny any wrongdoing, but the inspector soon separates them and uses psychological pressure while warning them of the harsh treatment awaiting them in prison if they don't confess. In the end, the boys soon get overwhelmed as Boris breaks down and admits they did bring Katya into the apartment and had forced themselves on her. Even after their confessions, the situation takes a sharp turn when Vadim's father, Colonel Nikolai, a high-ranking police official, arrives on scene. He immediately chose to leverage his authority, as he requested that the boys be released into his custody so he can handle the matter privately. But the inspector refuses as he reveals that the suspects have already confessed, and a bloodstained sheet recovered from the apartment corroborates the victim's account. However, when Nikolai insists again, the inspector demands that they get an official order in writing. Just then, a junior officer shares additional intelligence about the situation that according to multiple neighborhood residents, the group of boys have routinely held parties every Wednesday during which they harass women. Their behavior is well known and widely condemned. Now totally overwhelmed by the evidence and witness testimony, Nikolai retreats for the moment, but it's clear he is not giving up. The next morning, Ivan awakens to find Katia missing from her room. When he searches, he eventually hears her voice from the bathroom. She confesses she can barely face a reflection in the mirror, and this breaks Ivan's heart. So, he offered to call a trusted female doctor from their building to check on her. But Katia refuses, as she is still very unwilling to let anyone else know what happened. However, Ivan tells her that the entire neighborhood already knows due to the police activity the previous day. Devastated, Katia confesses that she fears her reputation is permanently damaged. Eventually, the doctor checks on her and confirms her physical condition is fragile. She advises that she gets adequate rest and time to heal, but she concludes that she would need more emotional support for her to recover fully. Later that day, Ivan receives troubling news that the boys have been released and that Colonel Nikolai has used his influence to secure their freedom. Ivan is furious at the news, but he chooses to remain focused on getting justice for his granddaughter. The next day, he takes Katia to a police officer in the hopes of filing a formal complaint and pushing the case to court. However, their efforts are crushed when she discovers that the officer is also corrupt and that he is working for Nikolai. The officer even mocks Katia's story and accuses her of seducing the boys deliberately, implying she had orchestrated the encounter to force marriage with one of them. Humiliated and emotionally drained, Katia loses all faith in the justice system as she confesses that she no longer has the will to fight and wishes to just bury the memory. But Ivan stands firm and refuses to let the incident be silenced. He is determined to expose the truth and bring those responsible to justice, no matter the cost. The day after their visit to the station, Ivan spots the boys loitering in a parked car. He calmly approaches them and tells them that he has memorized their faces before turning away. The group, who were still arrogant and self-assured, brushes it off, unaware that their actions have set something irreversible in motion. Frustrated by the institutional corruption, Ivan visits an old friend who is a judge hoping for support. But instead of helping him, the judge blames Katia for the assault and accuses her of immoral behavior. Disgusted once more, Ivan walks out, and that is when he realizes that he can no longer rely on the system. Now fully determined to seek justice on his own, he sells his seasonal property to fund what is to come next. Later that day, when Ivan returns home, Katia tells him that Colonel Nikolai had come by with a cash envelope in an attempt to silence her. Enraged and disgusted by his audacity, Ivan storms to Nikolai's house and throws the money back in his face. His response is clear. No price can buy his silence or forgiveness. That evening, Katia tells her grandfather that her aunt has left the keys to her apartment for her so she can care for her pet birds. Ivan chose to help her out that day, and when he gets to the apartment, he discovers that it directly faces the home of the boys. He immediately realizes that this is a tactical advantage for him, and he begins formulating a plan. The next day, Ivan goes to the weapon market and searches for guns to buy. However, the official dealers refuse to sell him anything beyond basic handguns. But one man who had overheard the conversation offered something more serious. He takes Ivan to a secluded location where he allows him to inspect various firearms. Among them, an SVD sniper rifle catches his eye. He immediately tested his shooting and made every shot with silent precision. He eventually buys the weapon and its attached silencer, confirming to the salesman that its intended use won't be legal. When he returns home, Ivan is greeted by Katia's estranged mother, who has just returned from Turkey with her new boyfriend. She showers her with gifts and encourages Katia to move on as she tries to present herself as a supportive parent. But she soon drops her facade that evening when she privately asks Ivan for money. But he immediately sensed her true motive for returning, and he confronts her. That is when she admits that she had only returned to exploit the situation. and even threatens to seek money from Nikolai instead. Furious by this, Ivan throws everything she had bought for them outside and forbids her from ever returning. The following morning, Ivan visits the local park where finds his old friends playing chess. As he watches, the three boys enter their apartment across the street. So he quietly slips away and heads to Katya's aunt's unit. From its windows, we see that he has a clear and unobstructed view directly into the boys' living room. With the high-powered sniper rifle in hand and his target in plain sight, Ivan prepares to carry out the justice that the legal system failed to deliver. From the vantage point of the apartment across the street, Ivan locks onto his first target. With silent precision, he pulls the trigger. The bullet strikes Boris directly in the groin, leaving him permanently mutilated. Ivan immediately stashes the weapon and calmly rejoins his friends, as he blends into the background like nothing had happened. In the meantime, Boris is rushed to the hospital by his terrified friends. Later on, we see Nikolai questioning Vadim and Igor, as he suspects that they might have been reckless with their firearms. But the two insist they were merely talking when the incident occurred. Sensing that there is something deeper, Nikolai begins to fear that someone is hunting them down. Meanwhile, the police inspector starts to grow suspicious of Ivan, as he suspects that he has motives for such actions. So he tells Ivan that is being considered a prime suspect. He also explains that Nikolai won't rest until Ivan is dealt with one way or another. Days later, Ivan returns to Katya's aunt's apartment, and this time his target is Igor. He finds him relaxing in his parked car, totally unaware of the danger looming. Moments later, Ivan fires at the vehicle's gas tank, causing a fiery explosion. Although Igor manages to escape, his lower body is scorched beyond recovery, and he is told that he will never be able to walk again. In the end, Nikolai becomes totally worried as he figures the pattern, so he quickly warns Vadim to stay vigilant, and he also reinforces the house, fearing that his son will be the next target. In the meantime, Vadim's growing paranoia begins to consume him from the inside. Elsewhere, the inspector visits Katya's home to speak with Ivan, although he is not there. Katya mentions that he frequently visits her aunt's apartment to care for the birds. So, the inspector collects the keys to the apartment and immediately starts connecting the dots in connection to the recent events. Around that time, Nikolai arrives at Ivan's with a search warrant and a team of officers. They comb through Ivan's home, expecting to uncover the weapon, but find nothing. Just then, Katya's aunt arrives and requests for her keys. So, the police immediately decide to search her apartment as well. Seeing this, Ivan grows tense as he knows that his rifle is hidden there. But surprisingly, the search yields no results as well. Knowing that he has no evidence to nail him, Nikolai chooses to confront Ivan directly as he pleads with him to spare Vadim. But Ivan cynically responds that something has already happened to him. Alarmed by this, Nikolai rushes home. When he arrives and knocks on the door, Vadim panics, and in that state, he mistakes his father's voice for the assassins and opens fire through the door, and he fatally shoots his own father. When he eventually discovers what he has done, Vadim is shattered by fear and guilt, and he suffers a complete mental breakdown. In the end, a psychiatrist had to see him, and he concluded that his chances of recovery appear slim. Later on, the inspector invites Ivan to his home, and in a quiet revelation, he admits that he had confiscated the sniper rifle before the other officers could find it. Since he was aware of the boys' crimes, he decided to let Ivan go with a warning, as he believes that he has finally gotten justice for his granddaughter. In the final scene of the movie, Ivan returns home where he hears Katya playing her guitar for the first time in a long while. He listens to the music through the door as she plays a soft melody. And although the scars may remain, the sound of her voice signals the beginning of healing and a quiet end to a storm of vengeance. And that's the story of the movie Voroshilovskiy Strelok. If you enjoyed this recap, consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.